Okay, in this video here, we're going to continue looking at social entrepreneurship and human development. So ways in which we can empower Indigenous and minority groups. So previously we've looked at how we could empower women, right? So this is looking at Indigenous and minority groups here. So if I'm looking at Indigenous people around the world, we find that generally they are the most marginalised, right? So that means they have a lower life expectancy, higher levels of infant mortality rate, child mortality rate, maternal mortality rate is much higher here. So just got a range of examples here. So my Indigenous people from Australia, so Aborigines, those that live in the Amazon here, and I might look at different groups in sub-Saharan Africa. So for example, the Maasai people as well, right? So they are generally marginalised due to their geographical location as well, because they live in very isolated areas. Okay, so when I do look at a lot of the indicators, and if I was to look at the HDI on a separate basis, we would see that their elements here and the components individually are much worse off, all right? So a lot of them live in rural areas, some of them live off the land, some of them use the land for a livelihood here, okay? But at the end of the day, a lot of them are isolated, so geographically isolated. So the two images that I have here, they're looking at people who are in the Amazon rainforest. Okay, we're going to look at a video in a minute from a place called Utopia in Australia, where the Aborigines live. You can have a look at the conditions that they are living in, right, and listen to what it is that they want. Because as we go through this, we're going to talk about the bottom-up approach as to how we can empower people. So it's not people coming in and saying what it is that they should be doing, right, to improve their quality of life. We need to listen to the people here, all right? So we're going to look at
the continuity of people in this region is thousands of years old. Everything that goes for well-being is here on the land. Move us out of that, and you might as well make us non-beings.
Utopia, some 300 kilometres northeast of Alice Springs, is home to the Alyalwara and Unmatjera people. Somehow, they've survived everything that's been thrown at them since European settlement. Their ancestral lands have nurtured internationally celebrated artists and produced significantly better health and economic outcomes than most Indigenous Australians. But for many of the territory's Aboriginal people, the remoteness of homelands like Utopia hides a shameful fact. The federal government has spent hundreds of millions of dollars over the last few years on housing in growth centres and town camps in the Northern Territory, but the homelands have been forgotten. In Utopia alone, as many as 100 people are living in humpies like this one with no power, no sanitation and no running water. And it's that kind of neglect that's adding to the pressure on them to leave their land. Valda, this is where you sleep?
Yeah.
In this truck?
Yeah.
How many of you sleep in here?
2 kids and me and Roscoe.
On cold midwinter mornings, Valda warms water over an open fire to bathe her children before school. But like most of us, she aspires to something better. How would you like to be living?
I want to stay in the new house with the stairwell and a toilet and kitchen.
When you think about your children and their future, why is it important that they stay here?
Because that's their country and we can go anywhere.
Rosalie Kunoth-Monks is mayor of Utopia, and she's no doubt that stripping the homelands of funding will push her people off their ancestral land.
Nobody can live in these houses. Just walk a mile in our shoes and see how one would feel about getting things that are not even shelter.
Decades ago, the Northern Territory government built some housing, and Janie's is typical, a 3-roomed corrugated iron shack. And you pay $50 a week per person, so $100 a week for here, for you and your husband and the family. And when you ask for things to be repaired, to be fixed, what happens? Yet these homelands also have a positive story to tell. A promising network of schools, a highly successful health service, and the benefits of staying on country are many, from less diabetes and longer life expectancy to the near absence of chronic alcoholism and violence to economic opportunities.
You sell this to the man in town.
250, one bucket.
And of course, there's the artists.
Surely this gives an insight into what Australia could treasure of the past as well as marrying it into the present. In real terms, to have decent education, decent access of housing, that's what I see.
At 75, Rosalie feels she's living proof of the way forward.
So just looking at the video on Utopia, right, we saw a lot of issues there, all right, and how some of the people were living. So lacking access to sanitation, running water, toilets. So it's really important when we're talking about how we empower these Indigenous people and these minority groups that we go and we ask them what it is that they want, that they are involved in the decision-making process, that the people are the centre, okay? They know what it is that they need. If you have a good look and you recall that video there, you saw a number of vehicles that were clearly not in use anymore, all right? They don't need people giving cars, etc. Okay, it's really important that we go and ask, as I said, what it is that they need, all right? Because they want to stay on their land. It is who they are. It is part of their culture. It's what they know. It is what is important to them. It is their identity. So we need to go and ask them what it is that they need. They need to be involved in the decision making. They need to be the ones that benefit. They need to be the ones that are at the centre of any decision making policy or process. Okay, so we're going to look at a case study here called the Mapajo Eco Lodge in Bolivia. All right, so you can see here it's very, very small scale. If you have a look at the map here, the Mapajo Eco Lodge in Bolivia is going to be part of the Amazon rainforest. All right, so we're talking about Indigenous people. Okay, so minority groups here who live traditionally off the land in a rainforest that is generally inaccessible. All right. So one thing that they've looked at doing is setting up an eco lodge. All right, so if something is eco, we're talking about it being sustainable, environmentally friendly. That means that we use generally local material. We buy things from locals that we need. We make sure that we employ locals, that we have a minimum impact on the environment. But those that benefit from this form of tourism here will be the local community here. And that's really important, all right? So we're talking about this being located in the Madidi National Park here, all right? So it's one of the most biodiverse areas in the world. So if I was to go here, I generally go looking for nature. I would generally go looking at wildlife. Clearly, I couldn't get my way through this, so I would need someone to guide me, all right? So again, by setting up this eco lodge and ecotourism, straight away, as soon as I come in, I'm going to need a guide. Then I've created employment for locals here, all right? What I want you to do is I just want you to go through and have a look. I want you to just do a search on the Mapajo Lodge in Bolivia, all right? So if you do go have a look, okay, so I've also given you a website here that you can look through. Look at all the ways that they try to support the community, the local community. Now again, everything is small scale, and it has to be small scale because this is how these people live. It's part of their identity. So we don't want to come in and change things drastically. So we need to ensure that they benefit, right? So that they're less marginalised, so we can improve their health, their education levels. But at the same time, we don't want to have a huge impact on their culture, all right? So what I want you to do is just take 5 minutes, look through and identify ways in which they could or they do support the community, all right? So just go and have a look, take a look around their website at what they do. So if I do look at the Makajo Lodge, and you would have gone through and just had a look at it, it's fully owned and operated by indigenous communities. Okay, so it's not foreign owned, all right? So no profits would be leaking out, all right? So the indigenous community own the lodge. That means that they are fully in control of any decision making that is made, all right? So the reason it was created was to generate income through a form of eco and sustainable tourism for the local community, all right? So obviously if we go back and have a look, and you can look down here, it's very, very thick, dense rainforest. So it's very, very difficult to access. These people are incredibly isolated, all right? So this is their culture, all right? So what we want to do is offer people on a minimal scale, all right, having minimal impact. Want them to have the opportunity to go into the rainforest, experience this, okay? So it's nature-based tourism and it's cultural tourism as well, all right? But we need to ensure that we respect the culture and we respect nature. So everything's going to be low-key, low-scale, minimum impact, right? So all the profits are used to finance small community projects to improve the quality of life for people in the community and regions, all right? So you're going to see jobs created in the community as a result of bringing tourists into this area, all right? So that might be providing food, that might be providing timber, that might be providing services such as guides as well, all right? Or just people cleaning in the lodge itself. Okay, now what I want you to do, just make sure that you've got some notes together, all right? Just look up what the aim of the ecotourism project is and describe what the profits are used for. Okay, so again, this is a bottom-up approach, not a top-down approach. It's owned fully by the community, the indigenous community, so there's no foreign ownership or foreign partnership here. Everything is to ensure that the locals benefit, all right? So this is social entrepreneurship. It's small scale. They're not getting in debt, okay? They're not relying on aid. So there are the things that we've talked about so far in the course. So they're doing something whilst retaining their culture and improving their quality of life as well,